Yeah. Are you feeling this? Allowed to with brain raise your energy level. Make you feel fine. Feel it? Yes. Yes. Now then, this is the Motivator Show. Okay, let it set it down. I'll set it down. Okay. All right. Yes, I'm here now. This is the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. And be no doubt, we will win. Be in no doubt, we will win. Okay? Failure is not an option. And that you have to believe. So visit the Motivator Show. And this strong, we will strengthen your resolve. And this strong, we will motivate you towards action. No talking down to yourself. No disparaging ourselves. And there's no doubting ourselves. Yes, I'm feeling strong. We are feeling strong. Be aware, this show will motivate you and you will become transformed because knowledge is power. Yeah? Knowledge, real knowledge motivates. Real knowledge encourages you, ensures that you would never fail. I know you've not heard such reasoning in the past. But today it begins, if it hasn't begun already. This is the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. For the taking. Okay, let's start, shall we? Let's start. I'm encouraged by the feedback I had to last week's show or podcast, as you may wish to refer to it. Yeah, the content I know is resonating with ever increasing numbers of you. I'm pleased for that positive feedback from you. I am pleased. And I'm further encouraged, further empowered to continue this work. So first of all, before I begin, let's give a few quick announcements. Let's give a big thumbs up to Galaxy at Fiwi.net, who's taken us from night to day. Blessed to the management and great and good tidings, of course, to Ian King, okay, who's the presenter prior to me. Well done, all the management and contributors to Galaxy at Fiwi.net. I'm going to have it captured next week with the exact URL address so you can see it. For those of you who've not listened to Galaxy at Fiwi.net, I commend that digital radio station to you. And of course, I also want to commend those of you who are viewing us via YouTube and Facebook. A big thumbs up to you. Let me do that. A big thumbs up to you. There you are. See that digital thumbs up? Please give us the thumbs up. If you're watching us now, if you're watching the live or indeed the recording, please give us that digital thumbs up, okay? It really is important. It helps the YouTube algorithms to draw other people, other viewers to our content. Please help us to widen the scope of our listenership. It has expanded beyond all bounds, way beyond my initial expectations. But I also ask you, please, and let me just adjust this setting here. Let me adjust this setting. If I can do, there we go. I'll do this now. Then there you go. Please give us the thumbs up, and it's free to subscribe if you're on YouTube. It's free to subscribe. It's free to subscribe. Okay, free to subscribe. Give us the thumbs up. Okay. That really does help us. It really does help us. And of course, spread the word. Send the link on to your family, your friends, your network, and the wider community and communities. Yeah? Spread the word. Spread the word. Of course, if you're on Facebook, of course, log on to the Demotivator Show. Yeah? DE space Motivator Show. There you've got it. Yeah? And we are appreciative of your support. And of course, those of you who want to be purely audio, go to our Mixcloud presence, okay? And of course, many of you be aware that we are increasing our presence in TikTok and Instagram. Please follow us on TikTok and Instagram. Let's spread the word. Spread the word. The word. I am feeling good this morning. I am feeling fantastic this morning because I have exercised. I feel vigorous, alive, fighting fit. I want you to feel that way also. Please take the next step. The next step for this show, this podcast, is of course the lifestyle messages, the critical lifestyle messages. And of course, you know why they're important. You understand why they're critical. You understand and appreciate why we must spread the words about our lifestyle messages. Okay? You understand. But I'm going to come back in a second. I did want to point out to you all, this show will feature a personality that we've all come to know, and I'm pretty sure to loathe as well. But a personality, nevertheless, we must all pay attention to. Because if we understand the reason for the last World War, we understand why we must pay attention to the personalities that I will give highlight to later in this show. That's how important it is. We cannot simply hide our head in the sand. We cannot simply turn away. We cannot simply walk by and look. We must pay close attention to such personalities and ensure that they never see or get near positions of influence or indeed real power. It is absolutely critical for our health and well-being and the wider humanity's health and well-being. And that I'll explain to you in a moment. But I want to return to the most critical, the absolutely critical lifestyle messages. Many of you be aware that, of course, I am an elected official. I've seen the official stats that they've been placed in front of myself and explained, and they make for very uncomfortable reading for particularly those of us of African heritage or mixed heritage, or those of us of Asian heritage, particularly from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and the neighboring states, who have similar cuisines, which are heavy in certain ingredients, which potentially, and increasingly, I have to say, have adverse impact on our general health and well-being. And for that reason, I cannot ignore what is plain to see. So I'll go straight into the lifestyle messages. I ask you to consider the amount of sugar and salt that you ingest every day? Let me get the full screen up, shall I? Why do I ask you to consider the amount of sugar and salt that you ingest every day? I ask you to consider these ingredients we add to our food because of the long-term implication for increasing numbers of us. Sugar. There's a causal link between the overconsumption of sugar and diabetes in our communities. I say again, there's a causal link between the overconsumption of sugar and diabetes in our communities. And it is having a silent but devastating impact on increasing numbers in our families. I realize you're not seeing it in the national press, in the newspapers. I realize you're not hearing it on the radio. I realize it's not on the television. And I realize it's not been on leaflets being put through your door every day to alert you to what is a clear and present danger. Okay? I realize. And I lament that as a fact. Okay? I lament it as a fact. Okay? But the reality is that the overconsumption of sugar is having a negative impact on our overall health and well-being. It is having an increasing negative impact. And the causal link between sugar and diabetes is the numbers of papers run into hundreds, if not thousands, right across the world. It is recognized to be a danger. I no longer buy sugar from the grocery store, and I deliberately avoid foods that I recognize contain excessive quantums of sugar. Okay? So I strictly avoid it, even though I have a sweet tooth acquired when I was a child. Yes, as a child. We give children sweets for treats, but not fully appreciating that they develop a habit for the sugar, or the sucrose that you might see noted on the packets of food you might buy. Yeah, sucrose, sugar. Yeah, honey is sugar. Yeah, okay. And you've heard what the nutritionists have said to you here on this podcast, on this show. Yeah, you heard the inspired diabetic speak to us. Okay, you heard what he said. It's quite clear. You've heard what nurses have said on this show. That the overconsumption of sugar can cause the pancreas not to produce the sufficient amount of insulin. Yep. Therefore, it becomes numb. And therefore, what happens in our bodies? There's a dangerous rise of sugar in our blood, which is euphemistically referred to as diabetes, because you're not processing that sugar, because you've consumed far too much of it. It might not happen today or tomorrow or next week or next month or indeed next year, but it could happen next decade, 10 years. Yeah, it's a slow, potentially silent killer. And those of you with diabetes will recognize what I'm saying and recognize the importance of us controlling very carefully our consumption of sugar. I should say at this point that if you are viewing us on YouTube or Facebook, I'm happy for you to interact with the studio via the chat facility. I'm going to write hi in the chat facility. Yeah? Please, I don't mind being interacted with via the chat facility on YouTube and Facebook. So sugar, I ask you to consider the amount of sugar that you consume every day. Because I suspect every one of you will be aware of someone with diabetes, and that's how prevalent it is in our communities. I equally ask you to consider the amount of salt that you consume every day. Salt is one of those ingredients added to our cuisine for so-called flavor enhancement. Yeah. As opposed to sugar is to make it taste nice. Flavor enhancement, yeah? It does have that impact, to enhance the flavor, to make it much wilder, if you like. Nothing could be further from the truth. It is one of those pernicious ingredients that persist and can cause the hardening of our arteries, can ensure that our heart have to work that much harder in order to pump plasma or blood through our arteries and veins, with the consequence that our blood pressure is rising. Mm-hmm. The heart is working that much harder. And that is referred to as high blood pressure or hypertension. I pause there because I wanted to sink in, because I know that a good friend of mine, only this week, a counselor friend of mine, only this week, when she went along to see about her brother who's not well, and the nurse was aware that she was a certain amount of stress. And she would ask, just test your blood pressure. It's a simple machine. And her blood pressure was at a very, very, very dangerous level. I won't quote the figure, but it was at a very, very dangerous level. She's listening, she might call in of her own volition or send a message to us via the chat. Dangerous level. And if she hadn't done anything about it, it could have resulted in an aneurysm. An aneurysm effectively means where your piping or your arteries or your veins burst. Yeah? It could happen in your brain, your leg, or any part of your body. An aneurysm. It is dangerous, extremely dangerous. So I urge you to think and consider the amount of sugar and salt that you consume every day. Because at the moment, in our communities, particularly those of us of African heritage with those particular cuisines, designed and intended for people who are involved in manual labor, working long hours in the manual labor, either in the food or the factories, yeah? So your bodies have to be really strong. You need the excess energy sources, yeah? Just to survive. But nowadays, in our sedentary lifestyle, nowadays, the excess sugar and salt is absolutely not necessary. And currently foreshortening far too members of our families, our friends, our networked lives. So this is the message for you all. Consider the amount of sugar and salt that you're ingesting. Think about my show a few weeks ago, my podcast a few weeks ago, which involved the inspired diabetic, Lyndon, yeah? And his wonderful book, The Inspired Diabetic. I ask you to consider. I also ask you to consider the amount of carbohydrates and fat that we ingest every day. And again, this is another one of these biggies. The overconsumption of carbohydrates, in our case, it's primarily derived from wheat-based products and some root vegetables, such as, I have to say it, my people, the yams. Only yesterday, I was in a restaurant. In fact, I was in two restaurants yesterday. One is from the Caribbean and one, in this case, from Ghana. An astonishing amount of carbohydrate were being placed on people's plates. Enormous amount. Either the yam which is pounded, yeah, or the boiled yam, yeah. Oh my gosh, enormous amounts, yeah. You recall what the nutritionist said to us here. You should eat, in each sitting, we should eat no more than a fistful of food. Yeah? But I saw enormous servings. And indeed, the ladies and gentlemen who were consuming it were on the main, in the main, were on the large size. Yes, they were on the large size, inevitably. Yeah. So I hear you, particularly from West Africa. Yeah, I hear you on the pounded yam. Please, the quantum is way over what we as human beings need to survive for the next 24 hours. What I saw there, and I am not a professional, and even I could tell that that was overconsumption. Oh my gosh, yeah? That was overconsumption. But it's important though, because we form habits and styles of eating. And I know it's difficult for many to change. And I know that change will require significant willpower. That's why I always say, if you want to go fast, yeah, go alone. But if you want to go far and enduring success, we do it together. Do it together. Get friends and family and friends around you and do it together. We need to control the amount of carbohydrates that we consume. But equally, we need to control the amount of fat that we consume. Yeah? Now, fat is one of those additions to our diet, which is crazy. You see, you buy the meat, you see the white streak. That's fat. Yeah? That's fat. Try to avoid it. Yeah? We don't need the excess fat. Yeah? If you eat in dairy products, particularly the cheese, that is simply hardened cow's fat, bovine fat. That's all it is. The butter, the margarine, it's not quite so hardened, but it's simply fat. But the professionals call it table fat. We don't need the excess fat. What our bodies believe is that we're eating in excess for a rainy day. So what our bodies automatically will do, we're genetically programmed to store it. So you see members of our communities with bloated shoulders, bloated abdomens, bloated thighs, bloated thighs, and bloated buttocks or bottoms, he says. Yeah, bottoms. Yeah. In some people, some women, kind of, it's on the right places, but actually in excess. There are wards here in London. When I say ward, I mean these are political wards here in London, which are a majority of people of African heritage. And over 60 to 70% of the women in those wards are overweight, obese, heavier than the men. But if you go to any one of our high streets where we are there in concentration, people of African or indeed Asian heritage, you will see examples of obesity that will just make your mind boggle. The overconsumption of sugar, salts, carbohydrates, and fat is having an adverse or negative impact on the general health and well-being of our communities. And I urge you to reconsider. But don't do it alone. Seek professional advice. Speak to your doctor, your nutritionist, whoever has access to your medical record. Seek their advice how to manage your excessive consumption of sugar and salt, carbohydrates and fat, so that you are put on a program so you can eat more appropriately. Because I get it and I understand the challenges. And the last ingredient I just want to give quick light to is, of course, starch, primarily derived from rice. Again, one of those vegetables that we eat to excess. Yeah, starch is simply a packet full of energy that we store in our bodies and has the impact which I described a moment ago. I know those of you from particularly West Africa and the jollof rice. I can hear the Ghanaians. I can hear the Nigerians speaking now. Yes, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. And I love the jollof rice, but the quantums I see are so large. And if you do this every day for most of your life, some of you will, avoid the shot, but far too many will suffer the consequences. Yep, if you're from the Caribbean and the rice MPs from Jamaica and other places across the Caribbean, yes, I'm talking to you too. If you're from the US and you have the soul food, yeah, I hear you, yeah. The excessive amount of sugar and salt, yeah, the excessive amount of carbohydrates and fat, yeah, the excessive amount of starch that's contained in our cuisine. We need to get this under control. As you might say in other quarters, we need to get it under heavy manners. Yep, that's what he said. Heavy manners. Because not to do so exposes you to a whole range of physical and psychological maladies, conditions, which means they have to be controlled by pharmaceutical drugs, if you like. So it's within our gift, within our power, to make these changes. The whole point of these shows is that they are transformative for you personally, not me, for you personally. And you understand, because you now are empowered with the information to make those changes. But please, don't do it alone. Enjoy with others and do it together. Enjoy with others and do it together. The professionals have said repeatedly what is critical if we want to promote our general good health and well-being is, first of all, you should consume each day a broad range of fruits and vegetables, okay? Preferably the green vegetable, but a broad range of vegetables, okay? A broad range of vegetables, because that's what our bodies need to build and produce blood, yeah? That's what our bodies will feed on. It contains all the nutrients that we need to survive. A broad range of fruits and vegetables in particular. Every day should contain green vegetables, untainted with the excessive amount of sugar and salt and all the other ingredients. Natural food, unprocessed food. It's what our bodies crave. Our bodies crave. That's what our bodies crave, okay? Fruits and vegetables, a broad range, particularly green vegetables. Our bodies also crave appropriate amounts of water each day. Yeah, and I say this because we are more than 70% water. Yep, as entities, that's what we are. At least 70% water. So drinking between 2 to 3 liters of water will help you to stay healthy, fully hydrated. It will vary depending upon your height and your mass, of course. But please seek out professional advice. I'm providing but general advice that appeal to the cross-selection of people. But there's always someone who's slightly different on the edges, okay? But this advice is general advice. I urge you to hear and respond to the advice. Appropriate amount of water, no more than between 2 to 3 liters. I have my water here handy. Okay, I'm going to have a sip myself, in fact. In my case, I put a little bit of lemon in there. Oh, just gives it to that nice twang. Yeah, I love it. Okay. Most critical, of course, you're now consuming appropriate amount of fruits and vegetables, particularly green vegetables, broad range of vegetables. You're now consuming the appropriate amount of water that your body craves to survive, but your bodies equally crave exercise. Exercise is a critical part of your general health and well-being. I urge you to exercise. If you're not exercising right now, I urge you to exercise. And I say again, I try to encourage group exercise. Our community is got an abundance of lone rangers. We need to get out of that habit. What we need is to engage in such activities as a communal activities, as Ubuntu, the generational wealth creators would say to us, communal activities, where we do and own together. Your health is my health, therefore it's in my interest to protect your health and vice versa. Communal thinking, communal identity. That's why I love those wonderful people from Ubuntu, Generational Wealth. Do you remember that show? I might put a link in the chat for you later on. A fantastic show, a fantastic podcast. I commend Ubuntu Generational Wealth to you. Okay. I also want to remind you that not only should you take care of your physical health, okay, by feeding your body a appropriate amount of nutrients, a broad range of fruits and vegetables, particularly green vegetables, but a broad range of vegetables, consuming the right amount of water each day to make sure you are keeping yourself sufficiently hydrated, and exercising as is appropriate. Please, you can either join an exercise club, or I would urge you to find someone to exercise with, so you're not alone. You are never alone. It's important for you to take care of your mental and spiritual health. It is a critical component in your overall health and well-being. If in doubt, I urge you to speak to your closest friend, confidant about your mental health, but I critically urge you to seek professional help. Go together with that person you trust, if in doubt. And equally, your spiritual health, your spiritual advisors will give you the advice you need to promote your spiritual health. Particularly we as African peoples, we are particularly a spiritual people. I urge you to do so. I say again, I urge you to do so. And by that way, you are taking care of your physical, mental, and spiritual health. That's why these podcasts, that's why these shows is important. That's why this content is mission critical to our community. If you spread the word, you will save lives. Yeah? You will save lives. You see the thumbs up? You will save lives. Please help us to save lives, improve the general health across our communities. It is mission critical. And those of you, of course, who remember that wonderful organization who I had here only a few weeks ago by the name of Countdown, who are an example of the people responding to these messages, organizing themselves in such a way that they can respond to these messages, okay? Organize themselves, put in their resources, yeah? Just to promote good physical and mental health, okay? I want to commend Countdown to you, yeah? Now, they are based in London, based in South London, admittedly, based in Southwark in South London. That's true. But come visit them, okay? Come visit them. I'm going to put up their details. In fact, what I'll do, I'm going to play their short video, just so you get a flavor of what they're doing as an organization. Here we go.
Cheese. Famous. Hello, 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 hello. Awe. 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 You get one life only. We still get one life only. Why will we use I'm glad and enjoy the time? All of I know they finish. Time me know the waits nobody. Now why are the time for always let I'm nice every day and night? This one way we all feel we safe and nobody young. When you get what you want we go down you belly now you young. And the balance where you go die left now all the money young. So why for the pity you say for? The motor car where you let buy 'em. If you see finance where you collect bill 'em. Oh. You meet up woman where you let yan 'em. And if you let the man for keep 'em. Want them oh. The food where you feel for it for eat 'em. That fine la power where you let na for buy 'em. and tie 'em, oh. And if you baby love you,
You
you
gotta
back love 'em,
you get the same.
love 'em. But if you love them all, now you not for left 'em. Want them more, cause nobody know what's in tomorrow all. So every day of my life, yeah, all fasting, enjoyment, stay go. Now for land, for care for yourself. Nobody love you past your own self. All man be fed for himself. Oh. Now why I know they allowed with the other man, they can't take me peace away, away, me joy away, away, me smile away, away. Oh no no, no make nobody take me peace away, away, me joy away, away, me smile away, away. Oh no no, oh every day, I see they also live with the like na boku on a small irrigate. Land for the loose body, one cent. No to money, no to gently. No money make much a man and brother. As long as you get waiting, you dey eat. Land for the loose body, one ten. This one way we all feel we safe, now nobody own. You want to eat with too much, we go down, you belly, now you young. Balance where you go, die left, now all the money on. So why for the greedy you say for? If you motor car where you let me buy 'em, buy 'em. If you see finance where you call it, deal 'em, oh. You meet top woman where you let piano, yarn 'em. And if you let the man na for keep 'em, want them more. The food where you feel for it, na for eat 'em, eat 'em. That fine la power you let na for buy 'em, and tie 'em more. And if you baby love you back love 'em, love 'em. But if you love them all, now you not for left 'em. Want them more, cause nobody know what's in tomorrow all. So every day of my life, yeah, all. Fasting, enjoyment, stay go. Now for land, for care for yourself. Nobody love you past your own self. All man, they fed for himself, oh. Now why I know they allowed with the other man, they can't take me peace away, away, joy away, away, me smile away, away. Oh no make nobody take you peace away, away, me joy away, away, me smile away, away. Oh no away, away.
He's expecting, but you know he's making sure he's not another statistic. Well done, countdown. Countdown. Well done, countdown. Long may they continue that wonderful work, outstanding work. Okay, and those of you who are in London, those of you who are in South London, those of you in Southwark, it doesn't matter. Wherever you are, come down and meet them together. Yeah, work on your general health and well-being. They're there on Mondays and Wednesdays from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And they're at the Walworth Methodist Church Hall, and the lower hall, they refer to it, on Camberwell Road. That's in London, and the postcode is S for sugar, E50EW. And on Saturdays, they're in Burgess Park here in South London in Southwark from 8:45 to 9:45. Yeah, they're there now, I believe. They're congregating right now in Burgess Park. Only a few miles from where I am currently. They're not far from where I am currently. Long may they continue their outstanding work, you know? And I also, before I begin, I also want to give a big shout out to that wonderful organisation who I believe, you know, I cannot simply ignore. And that's, of course, an organisation that many of you will recognise. I always give a shout out to them. And that's the National Association of Black Supplementary Schools. This is parents and others coming together to support the academic and cultural and spiritual development of our children. I don't say kids, I'm sorry, I can't say kids. Kids are goats. Our children are human beings, okay? So National Association of Black Supplementary School, they have a website which gives you the details of the networks of supplementary schools that are wholly financed by the community, okay, in support of our children. The website address is www.nabsc.org. nabssorg.uk. The email address is info@nabss.org.uk. Please, if you are a teacher and you have a few minutes, a few hours spare, I know it's tough on teachers, I know, but if you have and you're passionate, please contact contact National Association of Black Supplementary Schools. Find out if there's a school near you, wholly funded by the community. It's our initiative, as it were. Please give them your support. If you're a parent and you're an enthusiast, you want to support children, particularly children, please contact them. Telephone number for Brother Near, the great Brother Near, is 07958 348 558. I repeat, if you're in the UK, it's 07958 348 558. And Brother Near will be happy to speak to you and give you advice as to nearest supplementary school that is nearby to yourself, wherever you are in Britain. Okay, I'll take that off the screen now. But a big shout out to National Association of Black Supplementary Schools, and well done to them. And before I go to my guest, I also want to give a big shout out to a previous guest of mine, and that's Sace Life. There we are, Sace Lewis. Holmes Lewis, so I get that right, of Mentivity. Again, another organization dedicated to support the community, particularly younger members of the community, to give them a pathway from school, college, to the world of work, finding their appropriate careers at the central part of the transition from academia to the world of work. And this meant this organization is set up to help that part, particularly for those from disadvantaged backgrounds, okay, who need that extra support. Mentivity is there to support you. Let's give a big shout out to Sace Holmes Lewis. And of course, if you want to contact him to seek advice, the email address is info@mentivity. I'll spell Mentivity, MENTIVITY, MENTIVITY.com. Or you can phone on 07 484 854 893. It's a UK number, of course. If you're overseas, it's +44. I'll repeat the number, 07 484 854 893. I commend Mentivity to you. And I also want to commend a big shout out to my guest of last week, a remarkable member of our community, Dwayne Reed, a business growth consultant, a entrepreneur's consultant. Yeah? Those of you who want to go into business, he runs a wonderful business school down there in Kingston. It's either number 1 or number 2 for the past 5 years or so. He is exceptional growth. He's displaying this exceptional output. I commend Dwayne Reed to you. And you want to contact him. His email address is team@DwayneReed.com. I'll spell it for you. Dwayne Reed. team@DwayneReed.com. Dwayne Reed. Again, those of you who are on audio only, go over to YouTube or Facebook. If you're on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, like in the content, or subscribe for free to the channel. You can contact Dwayne on this mobile number. If you're in the UK, it's 07 931 403 992. I repeat, if you're in the UK, it's 07 931 403 992. I commend his work to you. It's an outstanding example of member of our community. An outstanding example. I commend Dwayne Reed to you. He's helping to build generational wealth here in Britain. He's helping those of you with ideas, business ideas, to ferment those ideas to fruition. And he's enabling you to develop those technical skills so that your business will be successful. I commend him to you. Well done, Dwayne. Keep up the good work. He will be back again, but there's much more information to share from Dwayne Reed. There you go. All righty. All righty. Now, this show will be a fascinating experience for all of us. And featured previously. But I've got to tell you, this person is not of African heritage. This person is not of particularly Southeast Asian heritage, Indian heritage. Yeah, he's very much a Eurasian who emigrated a few generations ago, United States of America. And I wonder if you can guess who this person is, okay? I wonder if you can guess who this person is, okay? And the reason why I want to do this particular show and focus on this particular person is because this particular person is an example of why we cannot simply walk on by and not pay attention to what's happening around us. And even though I'm in Britain, what happens across the pond has an impact on Britain, Europe, and the rest of the world. United States of America is an important part of the world. Okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring in my guest. She is an African American, and she will provide the African American perspective on Donald J. Trump. Or as I would say, Donald Failure Trump. Let me just let's make sure, first of all, let's get the sound right with my guest. Good morning to you. Can you hear us?
Good morning. Yes, I can hear you very well.
Oh, you can. Oh, I know it's early morning to you in the United States, I've got to say. But I believe you're on the East Coast, is that right?
That is correct.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. First of all, I want to extend on behalf of the listeners and viewers here, thank you for getting up what is in the dead of night to join the Motivator Show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me very early in the morning. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I know this is your second time. Your last time you were here, you made quite a splash. Okay. So I'm going to go straight into this. First of all, can I just ask you just to say a little bit about yourself in terms of your interest in US politics? Why are you interested in politics in the United States?
Well, I live in the United States, so I'm concerned directly about the impact that politics has on myself and my countrymen. So I look at not only what is currently happening, but how what currently happened can impact the future for myself, my family, and those around me.
Excellent. And I like that response, because I know that, as you'd be well aware, far too many people try to ignore what happens in the world of politics. But ultimately, it's politicians that influence how societies, the directions of societies. And if you have the wrong politicians at the helm, that's a problem for society, huh?
Yes, that's very true. I think a lot of people find politics uninteresting
Yeah.
because of how it's presented. They don't really understand it. When we cover politics and how our governments work, we do that in what we call here 8th grade and 11th grade. So we're doing that with 13-year-olds and 16-year-olds. And that's really not the age where one actually cares too much about the future of the country and the direction in which it's going and the mechanics of the politics. And they're supposed to retain that information for the rest of their life. And remember, this is how it works. And these branches of government make these decisions, and this is how it actually impacts you. And this is why it's so important to vote. That's lost on children. And so as adults, you just find it boring. And so you're disinterested with what's going on around you because you don't really understand the magnitude of those persons' behaviors and decisions and the impact that it has upon your life.
Well said. Well said. So Donald Failure Trump, I'll put it up on the screen, has been indicted, or we might say over here, charged 4 times in different parts of the United States. Okay. Your president, he's been indicted or charged 4 times. How does it feel? What is the psychological impact it has on Americans?
I honestly don't think it has that much of an impact on Americans in the sense of people caring so much, because what he successfully did was put out this narrative that everything that you heard from the news was fake.
Yeah.
And he worked that narrative, and he really drove that into the hearts and minds of his base.
Yes.
Everything that you hear is fake unless you hear it from me. And what you hear from me is the truth. So you have one group that believes everything he says, and then you have another group who was never disillusioned with him. So they already felt he was guilty of many things, and that's why they didn't vote for him. So in that sense, nothing's changed. He has his people who believe in him, and then the people who didn't believe in him. But for us to have a president who's been charged with criminal behavior, a former president who's been charged with criminal behavior, it's kind of an uncharted world, because we did have Nixon, who resigned prior to being impeached.
This is true. Yes.
We had Trump, who wasn't impeached, even though they wanted to impeach him. And then you had Clinton, who was impeached. But none of those things, Nixon and Clinton didn't have the same impact, nor were they of the same magnitude, nor did they have the same following.
Yes.
The whole world is watching this. When Nixon had the tapes for Watergate, we didn't have social media, so nothing was happening in real time. Everyone read that in the papers, and it was very delayed reaction. With Clinton, his indiscretions, many people chuck it up to indiscretions as a married person more so than a leader.
Yes, yes.
But when we discuss the impact of Trump's indiscretions and his charges, those have a global effect because everyone's watching it in real time.
Yeah.
So everyone has an instant opinion, and everyone's instantaneously able to obtain information in reference to this case. So we're kind of in uncharted waters of sorts.
Okay. Yes, of course, you mentioned, of course, he was impeached twice. It's a detail I didn't include in the narrative. I didn't include that in the narrative. But I'm very conscious, though, that as he has been indicted 4 times, what I struggled with is to understand the reasons why. Okay, so the 4 times include election interference in Georgia, the state of Georgia. Okay, campaign finance violations in New York, the defamation case of E. Jean Carroll, where he was found guilty, I understand. Okay? And of course, what is going through the courts right now, the judge has found him guilty of tax fraud in New York. They're now trying to determine the amount of, I think, I'm not sure the correct term, how much he should pay ultimately. But if I may just go to the Georgia elections interference. Now, that seems to be pretty personal because it is focused in Georgia, was the county where African Americans were in the majority, to disenfranchise those voters. Okay. Tell us a little bit about that, because that seems to me really wild. And I note that the district attorney, as you called him over there, Forney Lewis, has been able to secure some interesting admissions from some leading lights in that particular case. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Georgia case, first of all?
So with the Georgia case,
Mhm.
this feeds into the narrative that he was properly elected.
Mhm.
And so it planted the seed for what would happen on January 6th.
Mhm.
So by saying that he rightfully won the election,
Yes.
that allowed people to believe that obviously if he won the election, then he is president. And when the presidency is certified, he would have it, even though it was being reported that Biden, in fact, won the election.
Yes.
So he put out this narrative that there were individuals who were voting
Yes.
erroneously. He put out the narrative that there were locations that were not accounting the ballots properly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those places who didn't count the ballots properly, ironically,
Yes.
were the places that he lost. He never questioned the validity of the locations that he won in, only the ones where he lost.
Mm-hmm.
So by putting that air out that he won those locations and it's falsely reported, and again, you can't trust the news, you can only trust him,
Yes.
also led to violence, because what they're not discussing widely is there were individuals who became unsafe because of these allegations.
Yes.
If you're a person who's certifying the election, you're saying that this count is true. And what you're saying in the minds of his base is treasonous, because
Mm-hmm.
you're falsely saying Joe Biden won this area, and you're
Yes.
falsely stating that Trump lost.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we must now be against you. We have to seek you out. And these ladies had death threats against them, and they blasted their information. You know, they doxed them. They put all their information out there, and they lost their safety because they did their job correctly.
Yes. That's right. Yes.
So then he had people who bought into this narrative or allowed the lie, who worked towards this lie being disseminated. And you have former judges, you have lawyers, you
Yeah.
have all of these high-level persons that one should be able to put his or her trust into,
Yes.
putting out this information that no, there was fraud with
Yes.
the election.
That's
So
right.
he was the
Yes.
duly elected
That's what he did.
individual.
Yes.
And so people who don't look at this information for themselves and
Yeah.
realize that this is lunacy, then sit there in their homes and say, you know what? We're going to charge the government, and we're going to ensure that they do the right thing by quote unquote any means necessary mentality. And that's how you have the January 6th event. So all of these things have a domino effect.
Yes.
And that's what the more serious part is. Yes, he interfered with the election, but not just in the state of Georgia. In every state, he interfered with the election.
He did.
The
Yeah.
state of Georgia,
Yes.
she just has said, you know what, I'm the attorney general, and I have decided that this was wrong and we're going to pursue this case. Because very much every state could have this discussion because he interfered in other states as well. He interfered, there were areas in Florida, he had interference in Arizona, in New Mexico. His interference was more of a national interference than just the state of Georgia.
Yes.
Only Georgia has decided to pursue charges against him for this poor behavior.
If I may ask you this point, and so you outline the details, but tell me, African Americans, because clearly he was targeting African Americans to disenfranchise African Americans, primarily African Americans. You were being targeted as a community across the United States, particularly in Georgia. What was the feeling amongst African Americans about this person's antics?
Well, it's interesting because we have two groups of people, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
You have people who are Black Americans who
Mm-hmm.
are for Trump.
Yes.
And they think that he's the bee's knees. He's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they have no issues. They have no qualms with following him, and they don't feel what he did was so wrong. Like, they acknowledge there's a level of wrongness to it, but not wrong enough to withdraw their support of him.
I understand.
Then you have the other group who sees how his behaviors have impacted us.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with Trump. I grew up in New York, and
Right.
I very much remember when the Central Park Five happened.
Yes.
And I had my own opinions of him prior to the election, of things that I watched growing up. I watched him being very boisterous about the Central Park Five, or
Yes.
now the exonerated Five.
Yes. Indeed.
His indiscretions as a married person. At the time, he was married to his first wife, but he was having an affair with Marla Maples. So you saw all these things. You saw that he didn't rent to Black and Hispanic people, that he didn't give them fair wages. So I grew up with that Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Trump was rich, right? And he was in a couple movies being a rich man. But there are other rich people,
Yes.
But you don't get a pass for poor behavior because you have more of a financial status than another person. And so I grew up with that Trump. So that wasn't the Trump I wanted to be president.
Absolutely.
There were a lot of people, because of how information was disseminated. I guess if you didn't live in New York, you really didn't hear so many awful things about him in your youth or in your earlier years.
Yes.
So that your introduction to Trump was television, and you only saw him on The Apprentice. And he seemed as though a no-nonsense kind of guy. So maybe that's why you have that difference of opinions when it comes towards him. But a lot of people see the impact of choosing him as president. And so you have people who had buyer's remorse. But oddly, he still has individuals who are supporting him,
Yes.
who are of African descent. I find it quite interesting that these are individuals who are well educated, who have looked at, I guess, the facts and decided that they still want to support him. Most don't. Most don't want him.
I think that's right. Most don't. And if I may just drift away from Georgia for a moment, because you now talked about New York. And this is an interesting one. The second indictment is for campaign finance violations. This is where, of course, he was using campaign money to pay off one of his side checks. Yeah. So, and this is which involved his former lawyer, Mr. Cohen. Just tell us a little bit about that, because that's a fascinating one as I read through the various news outlets. Just tell us about the campaign finance violations and why
So when
that
with
particular
New York,
cases. Yeah, yeah.
It's not just campaign finances
Hmm.
that they're questioning how he used those funds. We all know famously he used funds to pay off Daniels. There's
That's right.
rumors of him paying off many other people.
Indeed.
So that will also come to light. But also, he's being looked at for tax fraud, overall tax fraud.
That's right.
So
I'll come to that, but yes, go ahead with that. Yes.
he has businesses. And when one wants to receive money from the bank, they want to get a loan. You have to have your collateral value.
Yes.
And so he was playing a game of overvaluing, devaluing,
That's right.
back and forth to receive monies that he wouldn't otherwise be available to him.
Correct.
Now the problem with that is, if you and I were to
Yes, we did that.
undervalue our flats to be able to say, okay, well, I need this loan. You know, over here we had a triple P loan to assist during COVID. So if I undervalued all of my assets and I said, you know, I had workers who only worked this amount of time and I received all of these monies from the government, some of it would have been forgiven because I was in such a bad state, you know, because if I had access to more wealth, I wouldn't have been in need for those monies. So right now, they're looking at him getting fines up to $250 million. The interesting thing is his children will start testifying because the judge said, no, your children, his first three children is whom I'm speaking of, Ivana, Eric, and Donald Jr., they will be testifying. There's no reason for them not to testify, and they will have to testify to their level of culpability in these charges. They were old enough to understand what was going on. They profited
They did.
from this false information.
Yes.
And it's going to be quite interesting to see what the turnout is going to be. If they're going to dissolve the business, if they're going to try to put the business in other people's names to make it safe holding. But his former lawyer testified that he devalued the estate. He falsely reported the estate on several times.
Yes.
What he wouldn't flat out say is that he was directly told by Trump to do it.
Yes.
But he said it was implied that that was what he was to do.
Yes. Yes. Fascinating, isn't it? And again, I don't understand for any other normal human being, his or her liberty would have been removed by now. But we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. And what about the defamation case, the E. Jean Carroll, okay, which I believe is already lost, I believe. Is that right?
So that defamation case is currently in the works still right now. He tried to have it dismissed. So we all know Trump lives in this world that most of us aren't invited to.
Yes.
Where he feels he has absolute immunity and he has these powers as long as he says he has the powers.
Yes.
So he felt he had absolute immunity when he made the comments about Ms. Carroll. The problem is when the settlement was made and she was granted the $5 million, she was continuing to discuss
Yes.
her perspective of the situation. He came out and he said very nasty and inappropriate things. And the judge said, okay, if you felt that you had absolute immunity at the time that you made these comments, why did you wait 3 years to now invoke that as your defense? If that's what you truly believe, then why didn't you believe that 3 years ago? And why didn't you say 3 years ago that I was able to say whatever I want, in my opinion, because I had absolute immunity?
Yeah.
And so no one's buying that. And The thing is, if he loses the appeal, he was initially ordered to pay her 5 million. Now, what will happen when the appeal is granted in her favor? He will have to give her an additional 10 million. And if we start adding up all of these millions and the amount that he says he's worth, we realize that we're going to hit like a negative territory.
Indeed, yes.
Because with all of the fines in each state, they amount to more than his alleged net worth.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And it's just, it is so plain, so blatant, just like the propaganda around the election. I'm astonished. Again, he retains his liberty. I note that there was a person in our chat who suggested that, I've got to laugh, but I'll say it out loud, that President Biden stole the election. I'm well aware that Trump and his followers experienced more than 60 cases, trials across the United States, implying that there was evidence of election interfering, and more than 60 cases, bar one where there's some issue, but more than 60 cases, and many of them were judges appointed by Republicans or indeed by Trump himself, said there wasn't. So I'm always fascinated because there's someone here on the chat who suggests that President Biden stole the last election in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. I just find that absolutely fascinating. And this is why I wanted to do this podcast. I wanted to do this particular show. But I wanted to look at this matter more closely. How is it possible for intelligent people to defy all the evidence and suggest otherwise? Okay, so let me just move it on a little bit. Okay, you've talked about Georgia, and I've got Georgia on the screen, and the charge for racketeering by Forney Lewis has already attracted admission by some of the co-defendants. We've just talked about the E. Jean Carroll case, which, of course, the case you've mentioned, which refers to of assault in the 1990s. Okay, and we've just talked about the campaign finance violations, which is, as I understand it, going through the courts right now, and we've seen some interesting public displays, and of course the tax fraud, as you just illuminated, is one also going through the courts. How, if it's possible for him to survive even one or all of these cases and not end up in prison, I will be very wary. I will be very wary. Can I just ask you just to talk about this interesting term you Americans use, LLCs? Okay. Now, he's been accused of tax evasion in New York, and as a result, his LLCs have been suspended. The license have been suspended. Is that right?
Yes, right now, his licenses, he's not allowed to sell off or acquire new businesses currently.
Mm-hmm. And at the moment, the case that we're seeing on TV at the moment, where he's making these wild allegations and suggesting that the judge and all the clerk administrators are all Biden appointees, which is called complete nonsense. Okay, it's really an example of American justice being played out. Okay, but if he's not able to trade in New York, would he be able to trade in other states? Is the question, because there's quite a few states in the United States of America.
So right now, a lot of his businesses are based out of New York. So when you have a business, you register it with the state. and you register with every state that you operate in. So if he's headquartered, if the main entity where it's registered is New York, then that would limit what he's able to do in other states because that's where it's based out of. And then all of the other ones are subsequent allowances to operate in those other states.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe New York is the home base for the Trump Corporation.
Wow. So if the LLCs are not able to operate, that effectively takes them out of business. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Then that'll be something. Is he a billionaire? Please tell us. Is he a billionaire or not?
Is he a billionaire? I don't know. I mean, am I a millionaire? We would have to define what does that mean. Does that mean is one at this level because they believe they are and they say they are? Or is it because the bank can actually substantiate that claim? I would say that he's not a billionaire because, especially with this case, because you have to understand the values of his assets are declining because of the cases, because all of the business people are watching and no one's tying in any new money.
Mm-hmm.
If he were to sell off all his assets in our current economy, perhaps we could say he would be valued as a billionaire because he would probably be able to get that amount of money because a person would want to buy a Trump estate and there's monies associated with that. So, I mean, on that level, I guess we could value him at a billionaire, but I don't believe that he is.
Okay. Now, thank you for that response. And so I've got a single person in the chat, but obviously that person's is not placing before us cogent questions, so I don't need to refer to that person. Sorry, my dear. But let me just refer to Donald Failure Trump's character. Lies, liar, liar. Now, Trump has a penchant for falsehood and misleading statements, which has been widely documented during his presidency. And some estimate and put the total number of false or misleading claims he made while in office at over 30,000 times. This includes claims about everything about the economy, to immigration, to the coronavirus pandemic. While some of these claims were simply exaggerations, others were clearly misstatements, and others were, of course, more serious. How is it possible for you Americans to allow this person to lie to you more than 30,000 times whilst he was in in office? How could that happen? Please, you're an African American. You lived with him. How could that happen?
America's quite interesting. If you have listened to anything that Lindsey Graham had said and why he feels, he doesn't have to testify. Politicians are allowed in America, to lie.
Oh.
To be able to obtain votes and favor. Now, it sounds crazy because it really should be unacceptable. However, it's become, a wide practice that we expect that they're not telling the full truth, and you're not going to believe this man or woman 100% of the time because they are going to lie to get favor. That's the only amount of times that he lied. I think that count may be severely low while he was in office. There were many things that he said that were damaging. Many people in America, and I think really in our time, don't research information for themselves.
Yep.
They rather a person tell them without being able to support whatever claim was made.
That's right.
And that's the problem. when we've become such a lazy generation, I don't want to look it up. We have the most access to information than any other generation. Yet we'll allow someone like Trump to give us all of our information. And
Yes.
everything he says is right. And everything anyone else says to the contrary has to be wrong. And they have to be against him and they have to be un American. Because why would he lie to us? But he's a politician. And we don't expect politicians to tell us the truth. So it's
Hold on
just
a second.
it's
Hold
a
on.
very interesting
Hold on a
thing.
second. Hold on a second. Hold on. He is not a politician. He's a businessman. He is not a politician. Because whilst I'm a politician myself, you see, and I can assure you, any politician worth his salt or her salt will do the research and not get themselves to a position where a amateur person is able to present evidence that contradict the evidence I have before me. I would not make a statement unless I'm sure of its veracity. No politician, particularly one that holds high office as this person held, okay, would lie in such a blatant way 30,000 times, because you're bound to be found out. This is the extreme stupidity, to put it very mildly, extreme stupidity. So I'm not going to take that, because we do politicians down. They serve a purpose. But this person is not a politician. How you
But
guys...
by definition,
Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, he is a politician because he was
Oh,
a candidate and he was also an elected person. So, I mean, by definition, he is a politician. By practice, he may not
aha. Right.
fit the bill of a typical politician. But in America, we've had many unqualified people become politicians.
This is true. I've noticed that.
There's not a requirement. You know, one doesn't go to this amount of schooling. I mean, one would think that a person should, but there isn't a requirement. We just have an age minimum. Once you hit that age minimum, you can enter politics and could become an elected official. There isn't a real requirement outside of being elected.
A question for you. Mm-hmm. Can you confirm if Donald Trump was vaccinated?
Yeah, he was.
Wow. But yet, he discouraged people.
Yes.
Wow. Another question.
Ironic, isn't it?
Sorry. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Don't get the jab because it's bad. But I'm going to get it to show you guys that it doesn't work while I remain healthy.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Another question for you. The economy. Whilst he was president, I understand he added more than $6 trillion to the national debt. Is that $6 or $7 trillion to the national debt? Is that correct?
I'm not certain on the exact number. I would have to research that.
Okay.
But I do know that our national debt here has continued to soar.
Yes.
And when we have individuals in office who have a plan to spend, but do not have a way to draw revenue and ensure that we spend $1, but we learn how to make $1, that's a problem. You can't just print money. Money, you know, as we tell our children, money doesn't grow on trees.
Right.
Except, I guess, the U.S. Mint is a tree in that sense. We'll just print more money and then everything's okay mentality.
So all the evidence I have suggested that he increased the national debt up to tune between $6 to $7 trillion And whilst Biden has been in office, he's actually taken steps to reduce the national debt. I could just go on to employment. I won't do that for the moment. I just want to just move it on. I'm just conscious of your time. Because this is an opportunity, you see, that many of us here have not had to speak to an African American of what it's like to live in America during the time of Trump and the subsequent cases he's now involved in. And tell us about this case where he's taken top secret files to his home in Florida. I understand more than 300 top secret or highly sensitive materials that would require special handling and cleared access were taken to his home in Florida. Is that correct?
So the number of top secret may not be correct. So there's different levels of classification.
Indeed.
But the items that he took were classified and were to be stored in a manner that it wasn't being stored on. Being sprawled out on the floor is definitely not how we store sensitive items.
Yeah.
They're not something for us to show our friends when they come over. For myself personally, that bothers me because I worked in that community. That's what I did for my adult life. So I take that very seriously because information that could potentially be in those documents could be of harm to many Americans and also our allies, because we're allies, for example, with Great Britain. Not knowing the contents of the files that he took with himself. There's a farther reaching impact than a lot of people are realizing. Also, what he's trying to say, he has plausible deniability. I didn't pack my own boxes, therefore I can't be responsible for what's in the boxes, is one defense that he's using. And then he's also saying, well, again, because he has this absolute power mentality, I, as the president, decided that this is declassified.
Yes.
I say it's declassified, so it's declassified, so I'm authorized to have it in my possession. That is absolutely not how it works. The president can put that items are to be scheduled to be declassified, but there's a process. We have an entire office that deals with that. And that office would then take his request to declassify these particular documents and look over the entire document and say, okay, on sheet 1, we can release this particular information, but we still can't say this because we have agreements with other people to not widely discuss this. So therefore, we'll redact that portion, and then we would give you a document that's marked up, but this is what we can release to the public. You can't just blanket say everything in this box is declassified. That just doesn't make any sense.
It sounds ludicrous, even for an amateur reading this particular article on his transference of sensitive documents, which in some cases are military documents from Washington to his home in Florida, and he's no longer the president. What need would he have for such documentation anyway? But I note that the case that it's been tried in Florida, it's been led by a federal judge that he appointed. She appears to hold him in awe. Is that right? Judges in the US can hold politicians, as you use the term, in awe and thereby give them a pass?
So with him, he was smart. I think a lot of people don't see the mechanics of what he did when he was campaigning to be elected and then during his presidency. He put more judges on the bench than Obama was able to, because when a position comes available, the president is supposed to appoint the individual and they're confirmed by Congress. If Congress doesn't confirm them, then it rolls to the next person. Trump confirmed many judges, more than Obama did. But if you know that you're doing wrong, right? I'm conducting illegal activity. I know that someone may one day prosecute me. Shouldn't I have everyone that I hired be in these key areas? And that's what he did.
Yes.
He has so many people that he appointed
Yes.
sitting to preside over him. They're not recusing themselves. They're not saying, well, you know what? He did hire me because I'm sympathetic to his cause. So I shouldn't be able to preside over this.
Mhm.
And that's the case with her. She's very sympathetic to his cause. And I think part of it is there's a level of fear when it comes to him, because
Yes.
if he is able to be reelected, right?
Can you imagine?
Every person who wronged him, he's going to come for them, because he's still leading the Republican Party. I mean,
Indeed.
by 2 digits.
Yes.
It's not even a close between he and the number 2 person. He's leaps and bounds beyond them, and he's not even campaigning.
That's
And
right.
all of this is going on. All these trials are going on, and he's still leading them. So if he were to win, let's say, right, every single person who was against him, you better believe that he's going to sit there and unfairly, unjustly go after them
It is true.
and make their lives miserable.
Yeah.
And I think that level of fear probably exists in her as well.
Yes.
It's totally wrong for her to be a judge and have that. But I think she thinks of the forward consequences. If I allow this to happen to him and somehow he becomes president again,
Wow.
I'm going to be out of a job.
Well, if he were to become president, that would be the end of American democracy, would it not? He would not be first.
If he were to become president again, I think it would be quite interesting to see how all of this is navigated. Because if he's elected as president next November, then he's not going to jail. He may pay fines, sure, but then he doesn't go to jail. And every person who pled guilty, he's able to pardon them. There's just so much that can happen if he were to become president. And I just think it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, totally ridiculous. America would move to the right. It most probably would leave NATO. It would engage in protectionism. It most probably would curry favour with our friends over there in the East, and totally turn upside down the current world order. And I would imagine the move to the right, when I mean the political right, it's very clear, would not serve the best interest of African Americans, indeed the majority of Americans. Is that am I being fearful that that's in a summation?
If he were to become president again, also if DeSantis was to become president, because I feel like they're equally as bad. If he were to become president, there are a lot of things that have happened since he was president. I feel that people are more open with their isms towards people because he gave them a platform where they can just
Right.
come out
That's right.
and say, I'm against this person, I'm going to treat this person unfairly, and I'm able to.
Yes.
He also created this narrative where we remove certain rights for individuals that were set there
Yes.
because we know that they're so set back, they're so disenfranchised. franchise.
Yes.
So it would only, in my opinion, get worse. And him being in office for 4 years wouldn't help anything move forward when we talk about change and progress. I don't think that we would progress in the right direction. We would be set back. And so whoever would be president after those 4 years would have an uphill challenge.
But look, again, I note that the last election, Trump lost the election. He received 74 million votes. Biden secured 81 million votes. So it was a pretty clear margin. And what I can see thus far is that Trump has moved further to the right. I don't see his base, as it were, expanding, regardless of the current Republican trials and tribulation. I don't see his base expanding, and I don't see, unless you can say otherwise, that those who are moderates, those who can switch from Republican to Democrat or vice versa, are moving towards Trump, a twice impeached, 4-time indicted ex-president. Is that the correct summation?
To an extent, if you're talking about when it comes to Republican Party, initially, with the Republican Party, they saw DeSantis as a challenger, and they had expected things to be a lot closer. But his presence has only caused it to grow more attention towards Trump. And because he also, if you watch him in interviews, doesn't denounce Trump. He just moves on. No one will come out that's a Republican and say, Trump was wrong. Everything he did was illegal, was immoral, and such. So because they don't clearly come out with that, there are people who look at the options and say, okay, I'm not going to vote for these individuals. This is whom I'm leading towards. I see him being on the ballot next year when it comes to the primaries, because there's no one is really challenging him. Now, when it comes to who will win overall, I think it's interesting because I think that America deserves us to have better candidates on both sides. I don't think that we have the best in the pool right now. I don't know who we could have had on the Democrat side, but I would have loved to see someone actually challenge Biden for the position, because I do feel that both of them are entirely too old to run for presidency, with no regard to us looking at Trump's current legal situations. I just feel that at their age, that neither one of them should run for president.
That's an interesting response. And I'm in two minds about that. You see, in most armies, the generals are usually men and women who are extremely experienced, but tend to have white hair. Okay, they tend to have white hair. Okay, so my question to you is this: will he go to jail as a result of these indictments? Is he a racist? Is he a sexist? Is he homophobic? Is he anti-Semitic? Is he Islamophobic? Is much what he says really lies or alternative facts? Yeah.
So is he racist? I do believe so. Is he sexist? Questionable. I see areas where he the case can be made on either side. Um, is he a serial sexual harasser?
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that make one sexist? I'm not certain.
Okay.
Is he homophobic? I would say probably yes. Does he associate? And see, this is, I guess, what a lot of people have to understand. Just because you're an ist doesn't mean you don't know how to do business with individuals that belong to that group. Because, people will say, oh, well, he can't be racist. He does business with black people. Oh, he can't be racist because he has black friends, that kind of mentality. Or he can't be homophobic. He
Yes.
knows someone who's homosexual, or he
Yes.
has a daughter, he has wives. He
Yeah.
can't be, these things. But you can be and just be more concerned with making money than person's choices. So I think when it comes to that, he very much is sexist.
Okay.
I very much do believe that there's a lot of things that he says that are inappropriate, and he's been allowed to have this pass through life. And I think a lot of it deals with his level of affluenza, that he just says whatever and no one corrects him. No one says, excuse me. You don't say that. He's 77 years old. He is
What about,
entirely too old.
if I may,
Mhm.
what about his religious bias? Is he for or against Jewish people? Is he anti-Semitic? Is he for or against Islam? Is he Islamophobic? 'Cause I've listened to many of his speeches, and I have to say, some of the words, what comes out of his mouth, and how he's allowed to say much of it in public, I'm always astonished. Yeah? Whilst he did move the American embassy to Jerusalem against the United Nations resolution, okay, he did do that, but yet his subsequent utterance are quite different, very different, in fact. But yet, I recall when he came into office, he wanted to stop all Muslims entering the United States, blaming Muslims specifically for crime and international terrorism. You're an African American. What's your view on this one? Yeah.
So what's interesting to me about him having this anti-Muslim stance, right, is that he owes a lot of debt to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's anti-Muslim completely. I think he's anti-Muslims from particular locations, right? And he's very specific to whom he has this belief towards. Does he wholly lean towards any group? No, I don't even think he's pro-Christian. I think he's not one who goes to a normal place of worship, but he also has never come out and claimed an affiliation either. People
It's
have just
interesting.
made, here in America, they're like, oh, he's a Christian guy and he has Christian values. He's never said that.
No.
I don't know what about his behaviors would, if you look at Christian, like if you look at their fundamentals and their rules and policies, like which one, you're committing adultery, you've done all of these things that are kind of like against the tenet.
Mm-hmm.
But then they say that he is a Christian.
Yeah.
He himself has never said that.
Wow. Agreed. And I love that picture of him with the Bible.
Upside down?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? I've never heard this before. I don't even know which way this goes.
and yet his followers were not put off by that. I am astonished.
At all. Because they give him many passes. Many passes.
Many passes. But let's hope And the question is, will he go to jail? Should he go to jail? And maybe that approach my last
Those
my
are
question
two,
to you.
I think those are two different ones. Should he go to jail? Yes. Will he go to jail? I say about a 98% no. And if he were to go to jail, what jail does one think he would go to? He's not going to Fulton County Jail. If
Mm.
he does go to jail, he would be confined like Noriega was, living in a penthouse
Yes.
with the Secret Service, because we have to remember he has Secret Service detail for the rest of his life. So is the Secret Service now to be in the cell next to him? There's just there's so much that goes with him actually being confined that he would be confined probably to Mar-a-Lago.
Can you imagine in a
I mean, is that a
resort?
punishment? I don't really believe so.
Oh, can you imagine? He placed under home arrest in that mansion in Florida. That
Hmm.
would be completely absurd. And I hope all African Americans, at the very least, will voice their displeasure. I really hope.
But we have two sets of jails in America anyway. If you're rich, we have jails that have movie nights. There's a television family, they're a reality family, the Chrisleys. The mother and father went to jail for tax evasion. Um, and when the jail that they're both in two very posh jails here in Florida. One has movie nights on Fridays, and they play pickleball, and they get to go out there and do backgammon, and they have arts and crafts, and they're able to get just everything. And it's crazy because you know what? I don't have on my calendar to play pickleball like as a stand-in schedule and backgammon because I have other things to do with my time.
Yes.
Yet we're ensuring that they're living out there very well. I mean, I can send you a link to it. It's a beautiful location, almost to where it's a vacation more so than jail. And that's the sort of place that if Trump were to ever go to a jail setting, he would be in something more like that and not the ones that are flooded or have people having bed bugs and being stacked on top of each other and having poor food and only going outside an hour a day for recreation. It's just a different place. But again, he wouldn't even be at the rich jail. He would be on home arrest.
If I may ask as a follow-up question on this, because often I hear from Americans, particularly white Americans, that class doesn't exist in America. It does appear to be on the surface that class absolutely does exist in America. I noticed those who are foot soldiers have gone to jail already, and those who are the white-collar criminals are given plea bargaining arrangements and have been given probation. Class seems to be an integral part of American society.
I think it is. I think a lot of people don't look at it that way.
Okay.
But when it comes to our judicial system, if you have better access to better lawyers, you're going to have a better outcome. I mean, it's the same way when it goes to going to the hospital.
Yes.
My children have health insurance and we have an excellent program, right? So when we go to the doctors, we're offered things that someone who is uninsured or state insured would not be offered because our insurance allows, the sky's the limit. So it's the same thing with the judicial system. If I'm able to hire a lawyer, I'm going to get the best lawyer.
Yes, yes.
If I'm poor, I'm going to get a court-appointed lawyer. And that individual is going to be overworked because he or she has many cases and they're not going to be able to give the proper time to me. So they're just going to kind of ride through the motions instead of fight for me because there's no money involved. They're doing this for free. When someone's being paid, people who have money to be able to pay for a good lawyer,
If I may, at that
those
point,
people have a better outcome.
may
Mhm.
if I may, at this point, and that's a really important observation about America. Uh, on one hand, it is by far the richest country in the world, but yet it doesn't have a national health service.
Mhm.
And Americans have the most expensive medical care system because in the middle between the government and the people, there is a company, an insurance company. But yet, the insurance company have been paid both ways, both by the state, by the government, and also by the people through these insurance policies. Look, I'm not an African American, okay?
Mhm.
But I'm looking from point of view of the experience here in Britain, which has a national health service. And it was brought in by a Labour government. And let me just post it out there that I'm a Labour councillor, elected councillor, but brought in by a Labour government because far too many people could not afford healthcare. The basic needs of the people is their health. Yeah. Now, I would hope that African Americans, as I know that Obama, when he was president, sought to bridge that gap. Okay. I hope that African Americans will lead the charge to create a national health service in the United States and remove the private sector from being the profit makers between federal finance and indeed private finance. I think that's a really important step for America to take if you were to create a more egalitarian society. Because what you're describing to me is horrific, absolutely horrific.
I don't see it really changing because you have to remember, um, here in America, we have a lot of lobbyists,
Yes,
and
indeed, yes,
we have a lot of lobbyists for pharmaceuticals, and we have a lot of lobbyists for the insurance company.
yes, yes.
And those individuals do kind of give incentives to our lawmakers to continue to allow them to exist.
Yeah, yeah.
We have such a problem here, and I don't agree with it at all, but we have a problem here with access and affordability of healthcare.
Yeah.
Yes, you can get state insurance. Yes, you can get quote unquote free healthcare. The quality of that care is not the best.
That's right.
And they're only going to patch you so that you can continue on.
Yes.
They're not going to do what they may deem as elective surgeries or non-emergency surgeries.
That's
They're
right.
just going to do what you need to be able to move forward. So let's say you have a growth.
Mm-hmm.
The growth is non-cancerous and it's not causing you pain. It may get bigger.
Yes.
We'll wait until it causes you pain. And we're talking about immense pain, not discomfort. Then at that time, we would see to possibly remove it. You're going to receive a bill, and this bill will always be on your credit report
Wow.
because it's not something that can be discharged even if you have bankruptcy. So you'll always have that debt that you have to repay. And that's why a lot of people who are lower income tend not to go get preventive care.
Yes.
And they wait to the last minute to get care because they know that they can't afford to receive care. So that is something I would hope would change, but I don't see it because we don't have enough people lobbying for change.
Well, it's interesting you say that. Change will only happen where there's a determined effort to affect those changes. And I've listened to you for the past for nearly an hour or so now, and you are the type of African American because we're always on the edge. We're always leading the charge for social change. And I want to commend you for responding to our questions. These are questions that we ask from across the pond, as it were. Okay, but America has such potential still. But there are some fundamental issues in America, such as health, which is, a biggie. I would suggest
Yes.
that you African Americans. I know I'm putting burdens on my people across the pond, but I believe African Americans will lead the social change that will enable America to live up to its constitution. Okay. What say you? What say you?
Um, I do think change does happen when people move towards it, right?
Yeah,
Um, will will change happen? Change is happening.
indeed.
I think it is a need for us to get out there and vote. That's
The
number one.
vote. Yep.
Um, Vote at our local elections, at our state elections,
Yes.
and our national elections, not just national. Um,
Please forgive me. Say that again. We've got to vote in the local,
yes,
national. Yep. Go ahead. Speak
local,
again.
local, state, and national. So we have the ones that are widely publicized to you guys, our presidential elections, and our Senate elections. You see those widely, but a lot of people do not understand or
Yeah.
realize the impact
Yeah.
at the smaller levels.
Yes.
So your local government makes your local laws.
Yes.
They're the ones who decide what's taught in
Yes.
your particular county at the schools, which books are allowed, how we're taxing individuals. That's done at a local level.
Mhm.
So you want to vote at that local level because that's direct impact. You want to vote at the state because that's who governs over you to ensure that all of these municipalities are doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
And then you want to ensure that you have the proper Congress above those individuals and then the proper president above that entity as well, because that president will appoint all of your judges. When we have Supreme Court vacancies, he or she would be the one appointing those individuals as well. So you have to do your micro and macro level elections, not just your big 4-year election for president. So the biggest thing is for us to get out and vote.
Can I just pause there because we're almost out of time now? I want to thank you on that note. Because these shows are referred to as the Motivator Show, where we translate words into action, because success is ours for the taking. And you beautifully ended at that right point. We've got to be an active participant, influence the ultimate decision makers. Yep, that's what we've got to do. I want to thank you for your insights into what is happening across the pond. And I thank you for getting up what is for you in the dead of night.
Yes. Yes.
And,
I will be productive, and I guess I will go work out since I'm awake.
oh, gosh. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you again for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Greetings
Good
to
day,
you.
y'all.
Stay strong. Stay strong. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow. That was something. And I really needed to get an African-American perspective on the social dynamics and politics in the United States of America. What I will now do is disconnect from the Galaxy Afui network. And whilst doing that, there's a few more announcements I want to make. And these are support of local organizations who engage in outstanding works. And such organizations we should continue to support. But let me just say this to you in regards to politics. I know there are tendencies in our communities for people to suggest to us that we shouldn't be involved and we shouldn't vote, particularly in areas where we are significant minority in terms of percentage or indeed a majority. Okay. Notice Donald Failure Trump targeted districts or counties that were predominantly African American or diverse communities, if you like. Okay? Because he realized that if he could disenfranchise those people, then he could potentially win the elections illegally. If he had did the same in an area which is predominantly European or white, if you like, okay, then he would have had to contend with his immediate community. That's what he would have had to do. So it was just curious behavior, targeting areas which were of diverse communities in the mistaken belief that they were vulnerable to his machinations. And I've seen in the chat at least certain individuals who believe everything that comes out of the mouth of Donald Failure Trump, where there's good evidence he lied whilst he was the President of the United States, arguably the most powerful position in the world. He lied to the American people. He lied to the globe more than 30,000 times. Why is it a lie? Because you could do your due diligence, research, and you could see what he said was an untruth, a lie. Mm-hmm. Amazing, huh? Amazing. I said, and I've still got someone in the chat implying, despite the fact I know this person actually is, and I've now worked it out, that person is quite intelligent, very intelligent, in fact, But yet, that person is succumbed to these right-wing propaganda. Anyway, it is amazing. It is amazing. But here on the Motivator Show, this is where we will ensure we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. We will not yield. We will not give in to these types of propaganda. Okay, propaganda that does not serve our interest. Okay, I know I didn't open the phone line this week. I might open it next week, but I want you to hear firsthand account by African Americans. I want you to hear firsthand, because we don't hear from them enough here. Okay, but I equally want you, before you leave us on YouTube or Facebook, to give us the thumbs up. Okay, give us the thumbs up. There you are. There's the thumbs up. Or it's free to subscribe on YouTube. And please spread the links on YouTube. Please do so. Please do so. Okay, because that's the way forward. That's the way to spread the word, to ensure that these messages are heard and resonate with with the communities both in the UK, Europe, Africa, the Caribbean, US, and worldwide. Okay, it's verifiable. You can check for yourself that the information that is shared here on this show is verified, validated, and therefore you can trust. Okay, and I can assure you, without trust, it is difficult to progress. But if I just say this in closing, and reasons why I do these shows, because these shows are both shows that should be a commentary on the current social dynamics, but also address the issue of health, because health is our wealth. Okay, and we need to be seen through our actions, not only to be passively receiving information, but to be acting upon it. Okay, and I urge you, in regards to your health, to think carefully. What are you doing to promote your health? What are you doing? What deliberate actions have you taken to promote your health? Okay, what actions have you taken? You've seen the video from Countdown I played earlier on. Those people there come together. They resource that facility themselves in recognition. If you want to go fast, yeah, do it by yourself. if you want to go far, yep, if you want your success to be long-lasting, yep, multi-generational, you do it together. Do it together. If you've got to exercise, find a friend, do it together, or find a group of people who share your values. Do it together. Do it together. Don't put off today to tomorrow. Okay? But tomorrow may never come. Yeah? You've heard that saying? Please, passive receipt of information is not healthy. I ask you to act upon what you've heard today, to do your own research. And if you find some of the research contradicts some of the information received today, I'm all ears. I want to learn from you. But I hope I've been sufficiently due diligent in ensuring information placed before you today was validated and verified. Okay, regardless of what a certain member or two in the chat have said. It's been validated and verified. When I asked for their evidence, of course, it was just rhetoric. So, until the next time, I remain the motivator, which is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. Until the next strong, I remain yours truly.